Hey, everybody that's checking in the room. I hope you can hear me. Seeing some faces starting to pop up on the screen. I want to welcome you to our zCast today. I'm going to get our team a little bit of time to get set up, make sure their videos are working, make sure that we can see them, check their mics. Mr. Lipman, Ms. Rhodes, Mr. Pemberton, I see you all. So give me a wave. Let me know you hear me. Just want to go around the room, make sure you know who our guests are. And again, glad you're here. So with us today, featuring the Claudia Taylor Johnson band staff, Jarrett Lipman. So say hi, Mr. Lipman, so we know you're there. And Miss Rhodes, Jody Rhodes, say hi, Jody. And Mr. Pemberton, Daryl, can y'all make sure your mics work? Are we good? No mics.
Good.
All right. We're going to open you up. Jody's got a mic on. Let me get Mr. Lipman's mic on.
Good.
There we go. And Daryl's good to go. You good there, Mr.
There we
Lipman?
go.
All right.
Good. Thank you.
Perfect. So again, welcome. Thank y'all for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And I just want to say, Mr. Lipman, over the last couple of months, getting to know you it's been very fun and interesting. And I value the time that we've spent together. So I'm grateful that we know each other. So I just want to start by saying that. So I'd like to start with a real simple question. It's not challenging, and it goes to all three of you up on the panel. And it's real simple. Tell us about your musical history. So where did you start? Where did you go to school? Tell us a little bit about that, and maybe 30 seconds to a minute each. So Mr. Lipman, you draw the short straw. You're first.
Sure. I am originally from Central New Jersey. I went to South Brunswick High School, which is smack dead in the middle of the state. Had a great high school band experience and ended up going to study at Mason Groves School of the Arts, which is at Rutgers University. I was a drum major in the Crossmen, and when the Crossmen moved to Texas, that was my age out year. So I ended up down here student teaching at Ronald Reagan and have been at Claudia Taylor Johnson ever since it opened in 2008. I also spend my summers teaching the horn line at the Boston Crusaders.
Awesome. Thank you. Mr. Pemberton, let's go to you next.
I was one that grew up in drum corps at the age of 14, marched Garfield Cadets, spent most of my years at Garfield, moved out to Portland, Oregon, where I studied fashion design at the Art Institute of Portland, and moved down to Texas with Jarrett, who invited me down, and been at Claudia Taylor Johnson ever since.
Awesome. Ms. Rhodes, how about you?
I went to Texas Tech and taught middle school, then taught high school and taught middle school again, and then just retired and living the dream, still doing marching band. So
Do you like retired life?
I do.
I love retired life. I got to tell you, I know y'all are cold in Texas right now, but I'm actually in Utah and I'm looking out my window. I wish I could pick my computer up and show you, but we're getting 26 inches of snow today. And my belief is you're going to get a lot of that cold air in the next couple of days. It's going to leave up here and keep heading that way. Well, thank you all for that brief history that you gave us, but I would be remiss if I didn't say to you, the value and the appreciation I have for the service that you've given to kids at all levels. Anybody in the room that's teaching and is an active teacher, it's a challenging job. So I want to commend you all for the work that you do on a daily basis. And I know this year specifically has been somewhat interesting, which is what we're going to talk about. So I want to dive into that right now. And I call this first little round we're going to do forward thinking, basically by starting at the end. And so I'm going to ask this question to the CTJ staff, and it's basically this. So it's a Saturday afternoon. It's 10 minutes on one Saturday. Your band performs, or whatever day it was, Tuesday, the state title event. And you watch that performance on that gay, and it's the final one of the year. What are you thinking? What's in your head as you're watching the kids perform?
For me, it was just one of the most joyful moments of my life. I likened it to when I got the call that I was offered the job at Johnson, and just the excitement that went with that. And I think there was so much doubt throughout the course of the year about whether we made the right decision, we made the wrong decision, whether we were going to see the end. And so to see the kids having the time of their life out on the field in the Alamo Dome, it was one of the most stress-free performances that I've ever had. And I really, I was just so happy to be able to share that with our staff and our families that were in attendance that day.
I've looked at your performance several times, and one of the things that I like to say about your performance is it hits this point where I say the kids are performing with effortless concentration. And you said it was joyous and uplifting, and that matches my thought process. They were performing and not thinking about it. They were performing and enjoying the moment. And it's sort of funny because earlier in my career, I didn't think you could see that in performers. And now I've learned that you absolutely can see that in performers. So Miss Rhodes, Mr. Pemberton, either one of you, talk to me about what you were thinking as you were watching that performance on that 10-minute time block.
I was up with Jarrett. I think that we got to see it from up top, and it's one of the first times where we just really enjoyed the performance and not worried about, oh no, this happened or this happened. It was just, the show got stronger as it went, and I think there was just an overwhelming sense of relief that we made it to the end because we never knew if we would. And then I think Daryl watched it from the field. So
yeah, I think the energy, that the kids exuded off the field was absolutely amazing. And I think what was running through my head is just endless, sacrifices that everybody made to actually get this performance in, with the kids, students, family, staff, so it really hit me, especially at the end of the show. It was very, very emotional at the end of the show.
What was it like on the bus ride home?
So it's funny because we debated whether we were going to allow the kids to stay in the dome and watch, and just with all of the concern about COVID and wanting to try to keep them distance, we ended up having all of our kids head back up to the school as soon as the performance was over, and about half of our kids drove themselves and half of them rode the buses. But the reports just from the ride home, even before the results were announced, were that the kids were just so excited about the opportunity to perform, and still talking about how incredible the experience was, and all the ninth graders finally getting that real experience of being in the Alamo Dome. I think it was all made special just by the unusual circumstances of the year.
By literally being in the ring, being in the competition field, even entering the field, it was
just being at state. I mean, it's to hear John Pollard announce, you may begin your performance for the UIL state marching contest, and wondering if that was going to happen. I mean, those kids were soaking up every minute of that. And I think the bus ride with their friends is such a special part. And even that's been so strange this year, the socially distanced seating, and not every kid is on the bus. And so, just those little glimpses of normal, I think mean so much to them and to the band parents that were riding on the bus and talking about their experience.
So that's the end. That's how this year ended in the marching season. I realize the year's not over. I get that. But for the marching season, that basically put the bookend right there. But let's back up. Let's go way, way back. Let's go to March. So now you're in your March year, and you're starting to see the COVID stuff starting to trickle in. And the next thing you know, we're out of school, and it's whatever it is to stop the spread, and we're off and running, and maybe we're back in by May, but now we're not, and we're not in May. So what's going through your minds as a staff as you're watching the program literally start to be at the risk of grinding to a halt? Because that could have happened, because it did happen to some people. So what's going through your mind back in March, April, and May as you're starting to forward think of where you want to be at the end of the fall semester?
I think for me, one of the great parts about Daryl and Jody and Chris and Alan Sharps and I being together for so long is we kind of know where each other are going to be at. We've worked together long enough to understand how each of us handles crisis. I think as our staff has grown and we've added in our new directors, for me, the biggest challenge was kind of getting a pulse on where our staff was as a whole, and understanding where our administration was, our fine arts directors, just getting an idea of okay, I know there's a narrative right now that maybe it would be better that we look at not pursuing a marching band this year, and maybe this is just going to be a year where we don't do it. And I think once as the leader of the organization, it kind of figured out that everybody was sort of on board with at least trying to pursue something, whether we did a competition season, whether it was no competition, but we were going to do a marching band show. We all kind of agreed we were going to do a marching band show of some kind if school was in session. So that was sort of if we're going back for live education, we're going to offer something, and anything anything from there that is offered, we're gonna try to pursue it. And if it looks different and if it's a little bit strange, and so really a lot of our conversations were on what does it look like, and trying to talk to colleagues in the profession about what they thought. So I don't know, Daryl, you want to talk a little bit about where you were with it?
Yeah, I think, we just push forward. Jarrett does such a good job in communicating, plan A, plan B, plan C, and here's what we have in terms of our options. And I think starting, at the beginning of the summer, it kind of hit me in terms of color guard mode, what we needed to do to make sure that the kids get access, whether it's through Zoom or, in person, because we didn't know yet what that that whole option was going to be. So our staff started to get into color guard curriculum mode and develop a curriculum pretty much throughout the summer with a syllabus, a grading rubric, just so we have an option if we're in person or not, so that the kids, their education will get a little bit further, certainly, and not be interrupted, whether we're physical teaching or or if they're on Zoom. So so we pretty much just went to work. I don't really think that as a staff we actually stopped. There was a pause. It was just, okay, here's our options, and and we just went into, here we go. Let's make sure that we have options for the kids. So that they have that opportunity.
So I want to talk about one element of what you said before Jody weighs in on this. And you talked about there was a pause, right? There was a hesitation. And, and I've received a lot of phone calls during that time from some people sitting in this room about how to proceed and what to do and how to move forward. And, part of the thing that I said is this may be the time to be still and just reflect and think through. And I started seeing that more in May and started talking about it's okay to take a break and figure out where you want to go. But my next piece of that advice was map a plan anyway, regardless, right? And so what you basically just said was that I heard you just say there was a pause and then we figured out where we were going forward. And I think that's critical. And that's going to lead to another question in just a minute. But Jody, what was your take?
Well, I think mine is a little bit different, maybe from, well, I guess maybe it's not different, but I think I was the last band to go to contest in March. And Jarrett was actually judging sight reading. And so that's kind of when it started. So we were actually together. It was his spring break. I was still going to contest. And then I think we were kind of together when they canceled the week after spring break for Northeast ISD. And then everything got canceled. And so, I think that happened. We were together from the instant it happened all the way to the end. And I think for us, one thing we all looked at is what can we do in spite of what's happening for kids, as opposed to this is what we can't do because of whatever's happening. And so I think we just kept that attitude all the way through. And if I got down, Jarrett would pick me up. If Jarrett got down, I would pick him up. Same with Daryl. We started collaborating with other schools that were going to go ahead and push through this process and have that can-do attitude. And we all worked together. I mean, it was really a cohesive family experience around the country. I mean, including Mason, Ohio. I mean, we were grabbing stuff from them. They were grabbing stuff from us, and we were sharing it all with Joni from the Woodlands, some other Houston schools. And we just, like I said, I think it was just a really cohesive thing for all of us that pushed through it with that can-do attitude all the way to the end of the season.
It's funny you say that, and I wasn't going to mention this in this setting, but I'm going to do it. This past summer, I had the opportunity to work with your kids, right? And the one thing that I extrapolated from them was what you just described. Okay, was the can-do attitude. It wasn't a question of did they want to do something. It was a question of what do we do and how do we do it. That was the questions that I remember. And they were very focused questions on what's new. What do we have to do that's new? What do we have to do that's different? And the mindset change between what you just said, doing what we can versus what we have to do. is where I see a lot of difference that's occurred across the art form. There are people, unfortunately, that are doing what they have to do, and then there are people that are doing what they can do. And I think that's a real important distinction in the event that we're in, because we've had discussions about this, Jarrett. You and I have talked about this, the impact on the, not just band, but on the fine arts in this particular setting could be devastating over time. So the fact that y'all took the can-do attitude and moved forward, in my opinion, absolutely progresses the arts as a whole, not just band, but the arts as a whole. And I think that's critical. And I think it's a really good life lesson for us to learn that, you know, when things don't look good, when there's 26 inches of snow out my window and the freeze, and we're talking about physical circumstances, but the reality is, you can shift your mindset and you can do something different if you choose to. It's a choice.
And Ron, I think it's, you know, and it's something else that was a big piece of this was the ability to talk to band directors from all over the state. Some of them are on here right now. I mean, Brian Christian and I talked a lot over the summer, and Keith Witt would be working through his lessons with our students. And one of the things with Keith, and Keith has been a huge mentor for me and for our program, is Keith's situation in Judson is so different than in Northeast. It's a different structure of schools. They have different band staffing there, different resources. And, you know, when Keith and I were talking about this, Keith was like, I want us to do something. I want our bands to do something for our kids. And that was a huge motivator for me, having that guidance from Keith, because I know that, you know, it's easy to look at the Johnson clientele sometimes and go, well, there's a lot of resources there. And there's a lot of different things that may not be in place in other programs. And so I felt like, you know, I think there were examples going on all over the state of people in different situations, whether you had a lot of money or you didn't, whether you had parents that could be wholly involved or you didn't, whether you were at the top of the socioeconomic spectrum or not. And so I noticed Emily Gerwitz was a new band director at Judson this year, and Laura, they ended up having a marching contest in early November that sort of became like a major first step for all of us. And so, you know, Judson early on established as a district through Keith's leadership that they were going to pursue a season. You know, Emily was on fire the whole year. And I know Emily was worried about COVID, and I'm not putting her mind. It wasn't, these people were very concerned about the virus, but for me, I can't state enough that there were a lot of other players that you may look at us as the inspiration. I'm going, these are people that inspired us all year and showed us how it could be done. So I just, that was a huge piece of the comfort to take those steps forward, was knowing that we were not alone in the path that we chose.
Well, so Jody talked and alluded to something about how y'all relied on each other, you know, as a team. And she said, when I got down, you know, Jarrett lifted me up. When Jarrett got down, you know, Joni lifted him up. So how important, and not just in a COVID year, right? So what y'all do, I did what you do. What y'all do is stressful. It's unbelievably stressful. We know this. We're working with students on creating a product that may or may not be what we want it to when it hits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But how important is the emotional support piece, colleague to colleague? Like, talk about, Joni can't be with us today, and she'll probably post on Facebook what that's about, but Joni can't be with us right now, but she was going to be here today. But Jarrett, tell us about that. What was that like, having that resource, that right-hand person to call?
I can't say enough how much I appreciate the friendship and the relationship with Joni Perez this year, and just being able to bounce ideas off of her, and from day one feeling like, you know, every day we would check in with each other in the morning. How are your kids doing? What's happening with COVID? How are you holding up? When she was having a rough day, it was there. And I feel like that it was more than just a friendship, from the standpoint that she was living the life that I was living every day. You know, checking your cell phone at 2:00 in the morning, wondering if a kid in a family were going to text you about a positive COVID test, and, you know, every day investing so much energy into, you know, the kids, and then wondering if you were going to have to face them the next day and talk them through disappointment because the event had been canceled, and knowing how much they were trusting in you. And so I went out to a rehearsal during the season and to work with her a little bit, and also just to watch her interaction with her kids, and, you know, to see her having those same conversations with them about staying safe and how we were going to get through to the end. So I just feel like she was such a huge part of my personal support network, but also pushing all of us to feel like we had a way forward and being able to do that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. So we have talked about the impact on the instructional organizational level. What did you see in the kids? So go back and go back into March. So, right, like it's a snow day in March, right? They're thinking, hey, 5-6 days, this is awesome. Extended spring break. Life is good. We'll be right back. And then they realize, maybe things are a little different. So maybe there's a little happiness. And then the more they move, what I noticed is the more concerned and apprehensive the students become across the country, not just the state, but across the country. So what did you see in the kids? What did you hear from the kids? What were they saying? And think in terms of like, walk me through like March versus summer versus, hey, we go to state next week. So what did you see and hear in their progression and their understandings?
Sure. So I think in spring break, when it started to become apparent that we might be locked out of school for a little bit, we sent a message out to our kids and said, get all your stuff out of the band hall, that we could be out for a couple of days. And we said, all right, look, you may never have heard of this Zoom thing. We've used it for drum corps conferences. You need to get Zoom. So the parents and the kids were getting on Zoom. We were thinking maybe for a week. And of course, it's a spring. And I'm in the mindset of, okay, if we're going to take a week off, and maybe we'll come back. We don't want to lose time for UIL. We'll keep the kids going. We'll figure some things out on Zoom. And so by Monday of the week we were supposed to come back when we were canceled, our kids and community were on board. And at that point, it was like, oh, look how fun this is. I can see my friends on this video conference thing, and we're having tuba sectional, and it was great. We were all in good spirits, and surely this was not going to last very long. So we were able to work out a schedule with our kids, or we saw them at least 3 days a week, sometimes with the top kids 5 days a week. And I felt like from day one, the other band directors, Rob and Dan and Alan, were equally on board with, hey, what are we going to do to make this work? So we were always wanting to go. But I think for me, the biggest question was like, what was Color Guard going to be like over Zoom? And so, Daryl, you want to talk a little bit about what that was like rolling that thing out?
Yeah, it definitely, it was, it was challenging at best, in certain aspects. But I think, for us, the important thing was we grew, together from a personality standpoint, we were trying to figure out, how to spend, while watching, and dealing with different, Wi-Fi problems and it was definitely some difficulty, but, we had to shift gears a little bit and really get into the educational aspect of things, and really get into the history of Color Guard. It allowed us to, tap into video and share videos of past and, and kind of going, through other avenues. I think for us, it was heartfelt, certainly, because, our Winter Guard season got cut short. So that meant that our seniors didn't really have the opportunity to finish, their season, so that's where, it became a little bit, difficult to actually deal with and seeing our seniors who've been with the program for so many years, didn't really get a completed season, so, and I think, the underclassmen really, started to corral everyone and started to, push forward for our seniors and so forth and so on. So, there were some things that we had to deal with, but, in all, it brought us together, certainly.
Jody, anything you want to add to that?
I was still finishing up middle school. And so when we didn't go back, I was fortunate enough that my middle school was a 1-to-1 campus. So they all had Chromebooks. We've been using Google Classroom, Smart Music all year. So we could still kind of keep going. But one of the remarkable things that I heard from middle school kids is that they miss their friends. Mm-hmm. And I think social media, plays such a huge part in their lives that they didn't realize how much they missed the person-to-person interaction. And then, I moved back down here, going to Jarrett's rehearsals. It was really, the one comment that sticks out to me is, I think you're probably going to touch on this a little bit later, but we never knew if we were going to have another run through or another rehearsal or whatever. And I remember Gino Cipriani was here helping with the brass and with Jarrett and everything. And he left right before Thanksgiving. And I just remember the kids like right before they did that final run through before he went home, they were like, this could be our last show. We're going to do this for Gino. And so they always had that mentality going through the season. So those are just some of the remarks and stuff from kids that left an impact on me as we
So Jody, was that a shifting mentality? Was that something different? So in other words, we're going to perform this for Gino because this will be our last time. Is that a normal thing, or is that something that evolved, that they sort of realized on their own intuitively, we need to make this count? Does that make sense?
Yeah, to me, I feel like the vibe at Johnson is always the practice and the performance go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. So I really feel like every time they do a run through, it's like they're in performance mode. But I think what was interesting for me is, you know, the goal in the previous has always been you work for something to the end. And this time you worked for something every time you did a run through because you didn't know what was coming next.
And you know, it's funny because when I was teaching, that's what I wanted to instill in the kids. Right. I wanted that deep within their core value, that every time they do a run through, it's a performance. It's an opportunity to perform. But what the difference is this year is it created an environment where that was reality. We talk about that a lot, but what I just heard you say was that was a real potential reality. So that raised their game, knowing that potential reality. I just find that fascinating. And to give credit where credit's due, Jarrett, you talked about Keith Witt and Brian Christian. So they're both long-term friends of mine. And one of the rehearsal techniques I actually stole from Keith, and I'm going to keep him muted so that he can't talk. One of the things that I actually stole from Keith was that concept of they need to perform. And when he would teach my saxophones, that's what I'd walk out in the band hall and he'd be saying, you need to perform this. And he ingrained that in all of the teaching that he did. So to hear that is impressive, but to hear that they intuitively understood the value of that performance is even more impressive in my mind.
I will say one thing to that I got from not having been there all the time, but going out there more this year. I do think when that became a realization, a lot of people who watched Johnson at the end of the season and at state, contest, I think they felt that emotion coming from the kids from the field. And I think what this year did for them is there was like an emotional investment into the show from all of them. It's like we all made this show together. It wasn't just a team of people, it was everyone, mm-hmm. We were all creators. And if somebody wasn't there, it was sad, and you didn't know why. So it just became this huge emotional investment into the performance mode of every run through.
Well, and the reality is you went forward and you carved the path and you made it happen. That's the reality. I mean, that's what happened this year, staying in the rules, of course, in the boundaries and the lanes, but you made it happen. You carved the path. Jarrett, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was going to add on that really Jody of our team was the first one that had to experience loss as an impact of COVID. Like we all experience right now the worry of what's going to happen if a kid is quarantined or if a kid can't be there for the performance. And on the day of her UIL was the day that they announced they were closing down the Texas Tech campus. And as they're getting ready to go to UIL for her performance, parents are pulling their kids out, including, the euphonium soloist, oboe soloist. And so she's warming up her band with kids that are having to step up to the plate at the last minute. And I don't know, Jody, you want to talk about how the kids stepped up? Because the story for me was a big inspiration of like the greatest worry of what happens if we lose our star performer in the performance. And Jody's experience with that right before this all happened was any of our first exposure to what could go wrong.
I don't know. I just I think you live with that fear every year. Mm-hmm. Place that burden on a kid, but I think what we took away from that is you can't fault what families do to protect their kids. It's mm-hmm. and nobody can fault that. And I think what I did is we just didn't make it a big deal, and I think that actually kind of carried over with Jarrett and with Daryl. Like if there was an extenuating circumstance for a kid in the Johnson band program who couldn't perform with the band, it just wasn't that big of we just tried not to make it a big deal. I mean, it's different. It impacts everyone different. And so,
Yeah, you're not talking about a kid that's skipping a performance to go watch a play or to go watch motocross or go to something. You're not talking about that. You're talking about a completely, and I hear you loud and clear, completely separate set of circumstances where people are raising legitimate concerns about their kid. And then you've got the impact of how does that impact the performance,
I think we just never wanted anyone to feel uncomfortable for making their decision that was best for them.
Well, and that's it. So what I find fascinating about that is there's a delicate balance there in my judgment. And that delicate balance is, how do you show you care for the kid while you care for the product at the same time? Because someone might say, well, they only care about their best kids performing, but knowing you, that could be nothing further from the truth. Right.
For us,
you want your kids healthy. That's the number one priority for all of us, which is why we take water breaks, which is why we make sure they eat on, which is why we do all of these things. We want them healthy. So you can, in my judgment, care for the product while you care for the kid. And Jody, you just described what that looks like. You said you just tried not to make it a thing. And I think that goes a long way with kids. I think kids know, when you crank the pressure. I used to tell my kids this, and there's a member or two of my staff out here, former staff. I used to tell the kids that come in and say, well, if you make me do this, I'm just gonna. And I used to say, we're never going to be the one that makes you do anything. So if you need to go run cross country, go run cross country. And what I learned in doing that is once I supported their decision, that built a trust relationship where they then came back and said, you know what? I don't want to do cross country. And it sounds sort of silly, but what y'all just described is what I think has happened. That trust relationship is intensified as a result of this. And they trust you to take care of them. And they know you're not going to take them into harm's way, even though you're preparing a product for a competitive setting.
And I think too, when you look at it from the standpoint of this was going to be a reality of our life. We were more insistent than ever that if a student even had a sniffle, a sneeze, a cough, don't come to school, and trying to educate the parents too on, the kids may really want to be there for a practice, but unintentionally that could spread the virus or that. And then also we wanted the kids to know that if they were going to be out for quarantine, that they weren't going to get shamed, and it wasn't going to be the end of the world. We talked all year, someone is going to be out for quarantine. Someone is going to get COVID. And so that when it finally happened, it wasn't this big, oh my God, what do we do? And so that's what I observed with it, with a lot of Jody's stuff. And I felt like we tried so hard that we didn't want kids to feel singled out if they were missing. I was always worried because it's a FERPA thing. And the administration was like, well, you can't say if a kid has COVID and you can't say a band student has it. And so my question was, well, when 3 tuba players are out for 14 days, how do we handle that? What do you say to that? So, and the answer was, you don't say anything. And so we had to walk that delicate balance the whole year of trying to, to make it not a scary thing when kids were out, and were parents going to panic if a kid went home and said, we don't know for sure, but we think some of these kids are out. And I think we learned a lot through the process, and I'm just really grateful to have had the example early on with Jody, and just with watching her students, that it just wasn't a big deal that day. They just made it roll, and no one really ever knew that the kids were stressed, and the kids seemed great and had a great show. And she seemed so calm in the sight reading room. And that I think that speaks a lot to making the environment calmer in the face of crisis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, listen, I'm going to give you guys about a 2-minute break. I'm going to let you just sort of clear your palates. And then I'm going to give you a question that's not. So to be fair, back in my radio days, I learned you do this little pre-interview, you sort of talk through things, but I also told them I wanted to keep it organic. So one of my organic questions is going to come, but I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think about it. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about it. So out of all of the what and the how that you've gone through this year, out of all the lessons learned, what are you going to keep and why? So there's been things you've gained that you may have never considered using before, never saw the possibilities, but now you've seen them, you've used them, they've been effective. What are those things? What will you keep next year, regardless of whether there's a COVID issue or not? So I'm going to give you a minute or two to think about that. And I'm going to throw it to one of my colleagues and our partial sponsor today. So you three take a break. So Ryan Agard, I want to welcome you to the room. So Ryan, come on in. And hopefully you can unmute yourself.
Hey guys.
So Ryan's going to share the screen with you, and Ryan is one of our sponsors for today. And I'm going to let him talk about something called Be Notable.
Thank you, sir. All right. And first of all, guys, awesome job. Just listening to all this and taking some side notes here, because I still do consulting and clinician work. So thank you guys for all your help. And Mr. Morrison, I do have my little timer here to make sure that I'm somewhat on time. Okay. All right. So long story short, everyone, I'm very excited to unveil this. If you guys saw my Facebook post, a few months ago, I have a new business, but to kind of go back just one step very quickly, whenever I stepped down from Dawson, I had a moment where I had the urge, I guess, how can I help more people, more students, more directors in some way, shape, or form? And then I thought to myself, well, I'm just really lucky. I was from South America, from Guyana. I moved here and immigrated to the States. I just got lucky in the sense that I went to a great band program. Rick Ganelli, Sharon Kalsak, Trent Cooper, who we all know, then high school, Frank Choika, Philip Geiger, Mickey Vasquez. It was just incredible. Then go to U of H. I have Mr. Eddie Green. I have Noe's there. I have all these people. And I just thought to myself, wow, like I just got lucky. And at the time, I didn't know how lucky I was to have all those people, all those teachers, those mentors. So then I got thinking, well, how can I help more students, more directors on a large scale? So I thought to myself, well, students, what students do, what we ask them to do, it's very notable in terms of what they do, what they bring, what we ask them to do. So I thought to myself, maybe I can help students and maybe I can help college directors. And so what I thought to myself, and I'll share my screen here in a second, is I thought of this idea. And let me go to my share screen. And give me 1 second here very quickly. All right, there we go. So here is the actual name of my business, okay? It's called, and tell me, and give me a thumbs up if you guys can see it. Thumbs up. Okay, so it's called Be Notable. I believe every student musician is notable. So the actual name, which is trademark, is Be Notable. So with this, what I'm going to be doing in my few seconds left, it's more than 2 minutes, wow. So here we go. Nice smile. Okay, so this is the actual page that is actually live. People can go onto it as of today. It's for all musicians, grade 6 through 12, college students. If they want to look at transferring colleges, they can do that. Students in the US. Eventually, there's an international component to it as well. It's for woodwinds, brass, percussion, strings, keyboard people, harp, all vocalists, guitars, and there's more, people that would encompass as well. Okay. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm connecting student musicians to college opportunities. At the same time, I'm also connecting college directors to students where they have an interactive profile they can create, they can look at it, they can share ideas, they can talk, they can mail out a flyer about their upcoming masterclass or scholarship audition, those types of things. I'm launching it here in the next few weeks, hopefully sooner, fingers crossed. So people can sign up on my mailing list and I'll keep everyone posted. The last part of this is what the actual profile will look like. So this is my sample student profile right here. This is Gianna. She plays English, horn, and oboe. My platform will easily tell a college director their GPA, what grade they're in, where they're at. They can now see how many views they have on their profile. So a kid will get really excited that, so-and-so from, Rice or from Eastman or Juilliard, wherever are looking at the profile. If they get a heart, if they get favorited, they can play what I call their music highlight reel, performance links, YouTube links, audio links, their contact information, everything they've done in school, all their accomplishments, SAT scores. That's always very important as well, ACT scores.
So Mr. Agard, I'm going to interrupt you because I want to make sure we're clear. This is the first group that has seen this public presentation?
Ever. This is the official unveiling.
So this group will also be the first group that gets an email from us inviting them to the website probably in the next couple of days. So absolutely. Make sure you check it out. And I think Mr. Agard's onto something. I think this is going to be really cool. I've spent a lot of time and energy with him on it. I think it's going to be cool. All right, Mr. Agard, thank you.
Thank you,
so
sir.
If I can get you to kill that screen share, then we're going to jump on back in, and I'm hoping that we've got Mr. Lipman back, Ms. Rhodes, and Mr. Pemberton. So what are you keeping? What are you keeping that you did? Let me get you unmuted, and I think we're good.
Two things from a logistical standpoint. One is we had a student leader, one of our drum majors, that built bottle fill stations and hand washing stations that we used outside that I think we will keep forever. The ability for the kids just to be washing their hands outdoors before they went inside, before they get food, and then fill their bottles up without having to touch a hose or without touching the bucket. I mean, it seems so basic. That was such a big deal for us that I don't know that we necessarily would have created it without the need for COVID. I think another thing we're definitely going to keep, at least from from a summer camp end, is our virtual band camp. I think that was we were forced to have to do it, but I kind of liked having the 3 or 4 days. We just did mornings. We did like 3 40-minute sessions, a music session, a dance session, and a visual. And I felt like that could replace a full week of band camp when we're working on fundamentals and doing video assignments and things. So maybe that means that families don't have to come back from a summer vacation quite so early to start with that. And I know with Zoom fatigue right now, it's hard to imagine wanting to keep that. But I do think that when we all start to settle back in, there's going to be big pieces. So those are two things. One was a real basic logistical thing, and then the other was more of the way that we might do business. I thought was different. So Daryl, what are you thinking with Color Guard?
I think Zoom for us, keep it Zoom. I think it adds a little bit of variety and a little bit of breakup time. In terms of having Zoom classes and being able to isolate certain things with the students, and having them do projects, through Zoom, as well, kind of opened up like a whole new world for us. So, so that's certainly something that I'll keep going forward, being able to do that and have the ability to have breakout rooms and, things of that nature. So, yeah. Jody?
For me, I think it's kind of funny. Like, I feel like we were kind of really getting pretty lax about just personal hygiene in the marching band in general. So I feel like this kind of brought us a step back.
None of us in the room know what that means.
Well,
except that we all do.
Yeah. So I think that, and I really, honestly, I just really enjoyed watching the 3-step interval and the 4-step interval. And I don't know, it was just cool just to see bands go out and march and play. And I'm not proposing that we do anything about that. That's not my issue here, but it was just kind of cool to see the big old 3-step intervals. And I don't know, it was fun. I mean, it was just fun to watch what people did. And so I guess my second part to that is just, I love the collaboration amongst the groups that helped each other get to the end. I thought that was pretty cool.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to come into our final topic. And it's one of my favorites. And I got to tell you, Jarrett, as soon as you posted it on Facebook, I thought this is a topic. And that was that single asterisk where you just posted that on Facebook. So this is the year of the asterisk. I mean, 2020 is going to have an asterisk, and we're praying to God 2021 doesn't, right? But I want to come back to the year of asterisk. So especially for kids that completed something this year. So if I'm a senior this year and I watched my fellow seniors from last year not to get to complete the year, the fact that I completed marching season as a senior lets me have something to say, I did that part. There's a box that's been checked. So, as you move forward, the question is, what boxes are going to be checked next? How far can this go? And hopefully it'll go forward and never go backwards. So the year of the asterisk, and people have talked about this, should this year be viewed differently from a competitive standpoint or not? Now I have a definite opinion about that, and y'all know I'm going to share my opinion. So I know that this discussion has, permeated. I know people have talked about it. What thoughts, Mr. Lipman? I'm going to start with you, and then we'll just sort of weigh in and sort of see where it goes. So thoughts about the year of the asterisk.
I think if you went through the season and you lived it, it definitely didn't feel like an asterisk year. The amount of energy that the students put in, the staff put in, was on par with any season that's ever felt as normal as it could be. And so, you always had this lingering thing in the back of your mind that you wondered, whether the season was going to continue, and we live with that. But for me, the biggest piece when there was a discussion about whether or not to have a competition season, when the argument came up, why would you want to have one? It's, and all the groups aren't going to be there, and it's going to be different, and some choose not to be there, and some couldn't be there. And my argument was, I respect that. And there were a lot of great groups that wanted very badly to participate this year and couldn't. I was in a situation where we had a district that was supportive of local control, local decision-making, directors making decisions that they felt were going to be the best fit for their staff and within the comfort zone in the community. And so my question was, well, what about the communities that do want something to do this year? Do we just not offer anything because we've got people that don't want to or don't feel comfortable? And I understand the concept of shared sacrifice and giving it up. I also know that my job as a director is to look at my students and to fight for what I believe is going to be the best experience for them, both from a safety standpoint and also giving them the chance to have a senior year. And so I stood pretty firm to the ground that I don't believe the right decision is competing this year. I believe the right decision is doing what you think is right for your community. And I have said I value the ability to make a decision. And all I asked was that as other people made decisions for their communities, that they didn't make decisions for ours. And so when I look at the asterisk, getting to the state marching contest, did it look different? Certainly. Groups all face different challenges to get there. Was the competition better? Was it worse? Was it different? The year does look different, and we'll never be able to say it wasn't. But I made a comment to you that at some point my worry was about, well, what does happen if you win? Do you really want to be the person that wins on the asterisk year and having this sense of guilt of, if we get announced as the winner, are we going to be publicly shamed because it's the middle of a pandemic and people think that we were irresponsible? And so I guess for me, it's watching the NBA finals finish and watching the Super Bowl happen. And I've always been on the side of it. If there's a way to make it happen, let's make it happen. And I respect the incredible pain of the loss of life and the fear that has gripped with this, which is where I go back to, I didn't want this year to be marred with negativity for our students and our community because of something that really was so joyful for them. They for everybody that was around them this year, they tried to be at their best and at their A game. And I saw kids stepping up in ways that I never would have imagined possible. And so I think for me, the asterisk takes on, a sadness in that everyone was not able to be there with us. And it takes on a sense of joy in that we were able to accomplish something on a year that was just so challenging. And by the end, as results were announced, and I wondered, okay, if we medal, if we are going to win this, is this going to be a negative? And just to see the positive responses from the profession and how, many people were celebrating the finalists and to see how excited people were about the state marching contest. I can't say how much I appreciate, the band directors and the music community in Texas for what I feel like at the end, they really rallied around Brad Kent, our leader, because Brad took a lot of heat for this, Gabe Musella, and I'm Brian posts in the chat, Brian Christian, was one of our biggest cheerleaders at the end. And I know it was hard to not be there with them. They're a school that we love and we look up to. They were the defending 6A champion. And Brian was one of the loudest proponents of cheering us on to the end and being there to support it. So the asterisk has its good and has its bad, but we're going to own it for the rest of our time.
No, I well said. Absolutely well said. That's fantastic. How you position that is fantastic. And I have nothing to offer to that at all. Jody, Daryl, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think for us, it wouldn't have made a difference whether we won or we didn't. I think at the end of the day, it's about the challenges and the sacrifices getting there, and what we had to endure. Made it. And Jarrett spoke about it at the top. It was one of the most rewarding experiences that at least for me personally, that I've been a part of. And it didn't have anything to do with getting a trophy or how competitive we were, in that standpoint. I just think what, we did as a community and as a family, and pushing ahead and pushing forward, for the kids and the product. And, and the second thing is the quality of the product. For me, when you talk about asterisks, it's sort of like, are you compromising the quality of the product because of the fact that, it's a season of unknown? Or are you going full steam ahead and saying, as a staff and as a community, like, no matter what, we are going to make sure that the quality is always there and it's not tainted. So, I think for us, we were able to achieve that, with the kids and the students and the parents. So for me, that's where I'm at, it's just all of us pushing ahead, had nothing to do with the competitive aspect. It was just as rewarding as, last place for me,
Wait. I want you to say that again. None of us, what did you say? None of us pushing forward what?
Say that again.
You said none of us pushing forward was for the competitive aspect.
No, it wasn't for the competitive aspect. At least, for me, it was more seeing the kids out on that field and doing what they love to do.
Yeah.
And the staff, pretty much doing what they love to do all season, which is teaching and educating these kids. That's what it was about. It was about the relationships and being out on the field and doing this together. Everything else, all the accolades that we achieve after that, yeah, it's great, but it comes, certainly after, the whole family environment and what we're able to do. So that's important to us, in terms of like developing relationships and seeing those kids out there. Because, and it's no right or wrong, whether you were there or not. I think, as band directors and as educators, you go through that in terms of wanting the best for your kids, period. So, whether it's an asterisk or whatever, we all share the same love, and that's what it's about.
I'm grateful to hear those words. Thank you. Jody, anything you want to add into that?
Just, I think along the lines, I can see it just from a little bit different perspective because I was there all day. I had 5 groups that actually made it down there. And I was constantly going in and out of the stadium and constantly making that walk from the parking lot to the stadium. And I think, and I kept saying this to Brad and Gabe the whole day, just the smiles of the kids, the way the parents were still out there pushing props, trying to find a way to give kids water in the parking lot that was safe, still watching moms do plumes. I just think to see even that little sense of normalcy in such a weird time, I kind of wear it as a badge of honor. For me, it's more like a Purple Heart maybe rather than an asterisk, but I think it's something special that all of us who were there will never forget. And just the looks on their faces as they came off the field, it was just a special day. And really the other part of that is they were essentially playing for nobody because they really did this for themselves. Because the way the crowd was dispersed in the dome, you didn't have that overwhelming sense of walking into a dome with thousands of people there. And I don't even think that bothered any kid or any performance. They were there because they made it to the end. And it affected parents, it affected administrators.
It's had an impact. I mean, yeah. And I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be there. I just can't even imagine what it would have been like to be on the field.
Was still doing his thing at the end, and he would like interview a drum major or whoever, and it was so emotional just to watch those kids talk about their performance when really, they did do it for themselves. Of course, there was judges or whatever, but it's not the sense of overwhelming thousands of people when you walk into that stadium. So,
but you overwhelmed thousands of people that weren't there.
Yeah.
Thousands upon thousands. You did.
I have as you're finishing and I add on Jody, I took a photo. I took a lot of photos that day, but I have a photo that I took of the kids coming out of the tunnel. And it's over top is the Welcome to the State Marching Contest banner. And just, I get emotional because I seeing them walk out the tunnel will be something for the rest of my life when there's so much that was bad about our world at the time that for 11 minutes that day, we all got to share that. And and it's like I said, it's hard because, there were a lot of people that were not there. And I appreciate Brad and Gabe so hard trying to acknowledge the bands that couldn't be there and the communities and the sacrifice that was made. And that's why I say it's a day that was mixed with so much joy. And at the same time, there is that bittersweet part of it, but just, for our community to see the kids come through the tunnel, anything that happened after that day was secondary to just the joy of those initial seconds and their faces when they realized we made it to the end, and we're doing this together.
So I want to end our time together with this thought, and then I'm going to throw it to Daryl and Jody first, and then Jarrett, I'm going to let you end. And then I'll just say bye when we're done. But I want to talk about this asterisk from my perspective. Okay. And I want to invite everyone in the room that hears this to consider what I'm about to say. When a decision is made that someone's going to tag an asterisk onto something for 2020, when it comes to the state marching band contest, for whatever reason, and maybe it won't happen, right? Maybe it won't happen. Maybe there won't be a denote and a footnote somewhere in some annals of history, but my belief is there's going to be a footnote somewhere. For me, here's what that asterisk means. That asterisk doesn't indicate COVID. It doesn't indicate pandemic. It doesn't indicate any of that. For me, it means courage. And I'm going to tell you why. Those kids did something that has never been demanded before. And here's what it is. They prepared a product and they worked on that product over a period of time, over and over and over and over. They improved that product. And they took that product to the finish line and got it to the top selling product in their market class. That's what happened. Now, at any moment in time, and Mr. Lipman, this is true, any moment in time, you could have received a phone call from your principal that said, stop. And that phone call could have arrived on your phone 5 minutes before you entered into that finals performance. So this year was about courage, because those kids that this group taught, and all the kids that participated, not just the CTJ kids, all the kids that stood on a marching band field, the courage they displayed attempting to move forward is unparalleled in our history of this craft. It's unparalleled because it could have stopped at any moment in time. And I don't know about you, that's a risk that as an adult, I don't know that I'm willing to take sometimes in life. If I know the outcome could be, I may not take that risk. So kudos to every kid in the state of Texas that took into the ring, that went into the ring, that went onto a field, that did anything. Kudos to them. So the asterisk for me is courage, 100% courage. So that's my take on the asterisk. So I would invite you in your band halls, if an asterisk is ever attached to this year, put a statement about what it means. And it's not, this was the COVID year. Nah, that's what caused this asterisk to develop. It created the need to display courage in a craft that had never faced a challenge like this before. So kudos to you guys. Thank you. And to everybody in the room that's teaching kids, thank you. I'm just really grateful for you. So I'm going to throw it to Daryl and Jody, and then Jarrett, you'll exit us out and say what you want to say goodbye. And then I'll say goodbye and we'll be gone. And I will make this recording available shortly to everyone after I make sure we're all good on the recording. So let's go. So Daryl, Jody, based on what I said, your courage, whatever you want to add, and then throw it to Jarrett.
I just have two things, at least me personally, this season has done for me is never underestimate the ability to adapt in certain situations. It's number one. Number two, having a greater understanding of how important kids need that social environment, especially this year in where, there was a lot of isolation going on. And it was, and probably Jarrett could speak to this and probably will, in terms of, why this decision was made, personally, for him and the program. But for me, just seeing the kids' interaction with each other, every rehearsal has been just an absolute joy and absolute bliss, in terms of bringing back some sort of normalcy, into their lives, So those are the two things that I take away from the season, at least for me personally. Jody?
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you for letting me play radio host today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
I think what I took away from the season is just the amount of bonding that went on where we were all in it together. And, you know, like Jarrett said earlier, the end didn't matter. I think there's two memorable spots for me in the season. One is after region marching band was over, Jarrett and I just kind of collapsed because, all right, we made it to region and we got to do a performance and it was so exciting. And everything past that was just the icing on the cake. And it became fun. And the kids enjoyed it and the kids loved it. And then my second most memorable moment, I think still is, in spite of everything that happened, even though there was a winner, I just remember watching Cadence Kale's face, because you could only send down one drum major this year. And I just remember watching Cadence face, and just when we knew we had won, just the look on her face of having made it through the year was just priceless. And she was the lead drum major for Johnson this year. So those are my two big moments for me.
Jody, thank you for joining us. Thank you. And Daryl too, saying thank you to both of you. Thank you for your service. Jarrett, you get to exit us, my friend.
I think my last piece is just the gratitude that I've taken from the season, from the band parents that stepped up all summer long. Our parents were as amazing as our kids, because parents sometimes, you know, the kids are on board, but if the parents are not, it's hard to make it go. And we had a crew of alumni and current parents that, whether it was building something, making plans, and helping to educate the more anxious parents that the steps forward were going to happen, that I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for our principal, my current one, Mr. Comalander, and for Mr. Melbrick, our past one, who it was never a doubt that we were going to pursue a football season or a marching season. And they had a steel stomach through all of this to work through every challenge that happened. And that was inspiring. Dr. Kent, who daily was available for all of us that were pursuing this, and trying to not only be an administrator of UIL, but a friend, a therapist, sometimes a motivator for the other band directors, Brent and Janet Flowermound, and Joni at Woodlands, and Brian, and just what they did, and for all of us. And finally, for you, Ron, because you started us out and started our student leaders this year, coming in to a very nervous group of kids that had a lot taken away from them and didn't have a lot on their plate. And for what you set up our staff with, I feel like our staff, once we were on board, we were ready to go. And you and Joni were the catalyst for our students to go, okay, how do we do this? What does that look like? And so I just, that we would end first full circle back here with you and with your team. I'm really grateful for that. So thank you for everything that you did getting us going this year and cheerleading along the way. And we're all very appreciative.
That means a lot, Jarrett. It really does. Thank you. It really means a lot. Thank y'all all for joining us. Again, I'll make this recording available. Y'all are awesome. Congratulations to your kids. Please tell them congratulations. Please tell them congratulations for me if you haven't already. So thank you all for coming. I'm going to end the recording and we'll see y'all all soon. Take care and have a good day. Enjoy the rest of TMEA.